How much garlic is too much garlic? Find out today in our blog about making sauce.
Welcome back to Mobility, Agility, Chiropractic Performance. Today, we're going to do something completely different, and I'm going to show you how we make our at-home meat sauce that we put on pretty much everything we can. Now, this is a recipe I found online. It's supposed to be a lasagna sauce, but we use it for pastas, for bakes, for anything we can think of that needs that kind of tomato-based sauce, and it is frankly just delicious. Now, I've made some modifications that best fit our family, which is we like a lot of garlic. So the recipe technically calls for 4 cloves, and I might have put an entire bulb in. So let's go ahead and get right into it and watch today's video on how to make your own meat sauce.
First step is to chop 2 small onions, or about 1 cup of onions. Your goal is to try to have the pieces of the onion be as equal in size as possible. Granted, I suck at this, so do the best you can. You also might notice I'm wearing gloves. This is not abnormal for me in the kitchen. 1, because I have to actually touch people's necks, and having onion garlic hands is gross. And 2, I don't like to touch raw meat barehanded. So that's my personal choice to wear gloves in the kitchen. You absolutely don't have to. Once done with the onion, it's time to do the garlic. The recipe calls for 4 cloves. And I really like garlic, and my husband really likes garlic, so I'm going to put a whole bulb of garlic in. Now, garlic can be a tricky thing to peel, so I simply crush it with the knife, and that is my fancy chefy way of doing it. I then chop and mince it up, and really, when you're working with a whole bulb of garlic, it's pretty obnoxious how much garlic you end up with. It's almost the same amount as onion, but garlic has some really nice health benefits and properties, and frankly, it's delicious. For this meat sauce, we're going to do 2 pounds of ground beef and about 1 1/4 pound of sweet Italian turkey sausage. Now, what I'm doing here is taking the sausage out of its casing, so it's essentially just a ground meat product. Once I am done getting all the meat into the pan, I'm going to add our onions and garlic, and I'm going to brown it on medium heat. This can take a little bit depending upon how much meat and onion you have in there. Once it's completely browned, we're then going to add all the fixings to get it into a delicious sauce before we cook it down. Okay, now that our meat is nicely browned, we're going to start adding in our canned tomatoes. Now, I'm using cans simply because I don't have time to make my own because I'm busy. We're going to start with 2 cans of 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes. I really don't care what type of crushed tomato. You can use an organic, an all natural. I find kind of whatever's available and what's cheapest and toss it in. Then we're going to have about 24 ounces of canned tomato sauce added. Then we're going to add 24 ounces of canned tomato paste. I like to take a spatula and really make sure I scrape out most of the tomato paste into the sauce. It just adds a nice rich and fullness. Now, this sauce with the amount of tomatoes in it has a high potential for being acidic, so we're going to need to add something to sweeten it up just to make sure that it actually tastes good. Once we get all our different types of canned tomato product into the pan, you'll notice I switched to a smaller one. I just felt it was going to fit better. We start adding our dry ingredients. That's going to be 4 tablespoons of sugar. Then we have some salt and pepper to taste. We're going to have 3 teaspoons of dried basil, 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, and 4 tablespoons of parsley. That can be fresh or dried. I personally use dried because I had it on hand. Then we have that 1/2 cup of water just to add some extra liquid to the sauce. We're going to stir it up really good before we set it on low to simmer for about 2.5 hours. Cover it up and leave it alone. Granted, about every 30 to 40 minutes, you want to go in and give it a little bit of a stir just to check and see how everything's going and make sure everything is getting incorporated. Granted, if there's a little bit of a boil going on, you'll want to lower the heat so it's just at a simmer. Now this is my first check to see if it's done. It's been about 2 hours. I'm going to give it a nice stir and then I'm going to taste it. It should have a nice, rich, combined flavor that isn't too salty, isn't too sweet, but is just right. And in all honesty, the first time I tasted it, I was not happy. I didn't think that the meat and tomatoes had combined enough, so I cooked it down for an additional 40 minutes, I believe, just to make sure. Finally, the sauce was done and it was time to get it into the cans. Now, I admit this is a really messy process, which is why I do it on my glass top stove so that it's an easy cleanup afterwards, because I haven't found a good way to get the sauce into the jars without having sauce everywhere. So what I did here is I initially filled up the jars too much because I'm not going to actually can them. I'm just going to freeze them. And if they are overfilled, they will break the jar or blow up the cap. So you want it just full, bottom of the threads. And this pot will fill all the jars that you see there in the background, plus give you a pan so that you can eat the sauce right then and there on whatever vessel you so decide, whether that's in a sandwich, on pasta, on gluten-free pasta, in spaghetti squash, or a lasagna. It's ready to go and be eaten at that time. And it is extraordinarily hot, and I probably should wear some heat protective gloves, but that's what it is.
I hope that information was both fun and something different, just to bring some levity to the situation at hand. Now, I am not good at canning. I haven't quite figured it out yet. That really is a dying art form that I hope to get better at. When we progress through things, as I learn, I will share those with you. But as of right now, I'm just putting the sauce in the can and tossing it in the freezer and then pulling it out and thawing it as we need it to eat for whatever meal. It generally lasts me about 2 months with just regularly using about 2 cans a week, which is kind of nice to only have to do this once in a while. Now, I know this isn't our traditional video. I hope it was fun. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave them below. And until next time, here at Mobility Agility Chiropractic Performance, we are always trying to get you better faster, keep you better longer, because no one has time to be sidelined.
To keep up to date with future content, please click subscribe. Additional information is found in the description of this video.
All information, content, and material of this video is for information purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider.